everybody. Welcome to UJ Sports. My name is Rodney DeBulsey. I am the publisher of that site. And shout out to our new buddies at On3. We're all a big happy family now, and we'll have more details on that as they come through. But July 1st is going to be a very big day for the University of Georgia media market. So that's not what you're here for. Let's talk about Jared Curtis, the five-star quarterback who has committed to the University of Georgia. A big, big get there. Give me your thoughts in the comment section. I definitely want to hear from you folks, but that is the breaking news. We had our man Jed May on site to talk about, basically he filmed it. We had a little YouTube hiccup. We couldn't get YouTube to work like it's supposed to, saying you don't have permissions. I'm like, we have the biggest YouTube channel in the Georgia market. What do you mean we don't have permission? Anyway, he streamed it on Twitter, so we got to watch it. Thousands of Georgia fans tuning in to watch the live stream of Jared Curtis picking the University of Georgia. Huge, huge. Yes, Mary, I'm got a five-star QB. Hope you can keep him. That is the hope. Can you? I don't know. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm just saying, I think it was like 13 out of the 15 quarterbacks or 11 out of the 13 quarterbacks who were drafted in the NFL wound up transferring at some point during their career. In other words, there were only 2 out of the 13 or 15 quarterbacks who were drafted out of the school that they signed with out of high school. So yeah, there are transfers. There could be transfers. You know, there's transfers every year. It's not uncommon. Heck, Stetson Bennett transferred away. He came back, but the point being is there are a lot of transfers. You had JT Daniels transfer. You know, Brock Vandagriff transferred. You do have a couple guys who are very, very dialed in at Georgia and who've been expected to come to Georgia in a long time in Gunnar Stockton, Ryan Puglisi. Now you had Jared Curtis in that mix. Ryan Montgomery is recovering, but these are guys who want to be at the University of Georgia, and that was a big thing about Jared Curtis today. He had been committed to Georgia for quite some time, and I think as frustrating as this has been, and absolutely, shout out to the TikTok folks, this has been absolutely frustrating for Georgia fans not getting a inkling as to where the hell he was going. He had his top 10, top 5, came down to his top 2. It was a very old-fashioned recruitment in that kid just didn't talk a whole lot. We would ask, hey, can we come to Nashville and talk to him? And his agent now would be like, no, we're not doing that. We'll be happy to send you a statement. It was very frustrating to actually try to get updates out of him. But basically, he gave each group, each team that was in the running, a visit, multiple visits, met with them, and then basically kept his own counsel and announced it very quickly. Thank God there was not this whole hullabaloo. It wasn't a 30-minute ceremony. I mean, start to finish is 4 minutes. Got up there and said, hey, this is where I'm going. This kid is no nonsense. Getting him is a big deal for the University of Georgia because you don't want a lot of drama. And when he had committed previously, he committed very early, and that was kind of out of the blue. And when he decommitted, a lot of people said, oh, here comes the drama. Here comes the bags of money. Here comes the NIL. And a lot of people are soured on recruiting. But this kid's not like that. He's not. He said, I'm going to take visits. I want to be sure this is the right place for me. And I don't want to do it as a committed kid. Because how do you visit a school when you're pledged somewhere else? So he backed off and he reopened his commitment. Went, checked out Auburn, checked out a bunch of other schools. So be it. And came back down to Oregon and Georgia. So his initial indication, his initial pledge was there. And he said when he decommitted from Georgia, Georgia's still in it. Absolutely. It's nothing about me decommitting from Georgia because I don't like them. They haven't done anything wrong. I just don't want to have this pledge hanging over me when I go see other places. It would feel incongruous to, you don't date after you're married. So he wanted to date around. And that's what he did. And now he has pledged to come to the University of Georgia. So I know a lot of people want to worry about the transfer portal. And again, you have to be concerned about it. Will that drive away Ryan Puglisi? Maybe. But here's the thing. What we've seen in the Kirby Smart era is if you have multiple 5-star talents, it sucks that you can't keep them all committed. It sucks that you can't add them all. You can't keep them. That's what he and Kirby Smart and Nick Saban used to do. You'd have 5 stars waiting a year, 2 years, 3 years sometimes before they saw the field because there's 5 stars ahead of them. You can't stack talent like that anymore. But if you recruit on this level, when you lose a guy to the transfer portal, you replace him with another one who's been waiting, who's excited for his opportunity. Now, your 3rd string and 4th string guys might not be that high. But I'll put it this way. Kirby Smart, when he was in Charlotte a couple weeks ago, said that they did not lose anybody to the transfer portal that they felt would have really made them better. They didn't fight super hard to keep anybody. They're like, hey, if you go into the portal, that's fine. Now, losing Damon Wilson earlier, that was kind of a blow. But the point being, go ahead and get as many of these guys as you can, and you worry about how the transfer portal works out later. And here's the thing. You can only really play one quarterback at a time. So if you lose one of these other guys, you don't not take Jared Curtis on the off chance that somebody else transfers out. So we had a good conversation on the dog vent earlier today on the vault side, which is where we do all the talk about the recruiting. There was one guy said, and we shout out to Jed May. Again, he was at this ceremony, one of the few reporters up there. He covered it live, but he went on our board this morning and told everybody Georgia feels really good about his chances. They're very confident in what could happen here. We're not saying he's coming to Georgia. Nobody knows for certain. I know for a fact Georgia a few weeks ago had no idea where he was going. They weren't sure. Somebody within the Georgia program asked me, like, what are you hearing? I'm like, what the hell am I hearing? What are you hearing? You're the staff. You should know. And they're like, well, this kid doesn't talk. So Georgia didn't know a few weeks ago. I don't know if they knew today. But what we heard this morning, or at least Jed May heard, was that Georgia was very confident in their chances. And a lot of that comes down to Mike Bobo's recruitment. So anyway, we put that on the board that, Georgia coaches like their chances. And we had a great poster come on and say, yeah, but they felt good about Justice Terry. They felt good about, they named 4 or 5 other guys that they felt good about. I'm like, and those guys didn't wind up at the University of Georgia. That happens, A little hunk of bourbon to celebrate. It does happen that the coaches can feel really good, maybe even heard the kid was going to pick them, and the kid goes somewhere else at the last second. Justice Terry, Caleb Downs, you name it. But I said, how many times have you heard the Georgia coaches say, we don't feel good about this kid, and he does pick Georgia? That shit don't happen. I said, in doing this I started covering Georgia in 1993. I started covering recruiting in 2004. Earlier. Anyway, in a couple decades of recruiting coverage, I can count on one hand the number of guys that Georgia said, the Georgia coach said, we don't like where we stand with that kid, and the kid picked Georgia. Most of the time, they feel really good or know for certain the kid is going to pick Georgia. So when the Georgia coaches said that, or somebody over there, I'm not sure who Jed talks to, I don't ask whose Jed's sources are. He doesn't ask whose mine are. That would be a betrayal of the source, even to team members. So everyone keeps their silos. No one talks about who, but I will ask him, how confident are you in this source? Because it's going to be my name, my company, UGA Sports, on the tail end of whatever you write. And Jeff was pretty confident. He said, I'm good on this. So all we said was the Georgia coaches feel good about it. And that was all we could tell our readers. And turned out that they felt good for good reason. So It's easy to focus on the kids that you think you're going to get and go somewhere else. But if it's 1 out of 30 per year, basically one kid per year, in 5 years, you can point to 5 kids who left you high and dry. What you don't talk about is the other 29, 27, 28 kids who picked Georgia, and the coaches felt good about it, and he wound up there. So, anyway, I'm getting far afield in the kind of recruiting theory and coverage. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Samuel, Shelf, uh, Trevor, Ethan, Rance Haynes. Please don't stash him on the bench for 3 years. You can't do that anymore. You really can't. Okay, so first number one quarterback since Stafford, is that a fact? No, actually, we don't. Rivals doesn't have him as the number one quarterback. I know. Let me add this to the screen here. Jared Curtis is technically the number 4 quarterback in the nation, the number 8 player in the nation. I know saying that he's the number 4 quarterback will blow your mind, but they have Faison Brandon ahead of him, Ryder Lyons, and Kenji and Henderson ahead of him. I love Rivals. I'm a loyal Rivals guy. Been with them, almost 2 decades now. I'm telling you, that's some bullshit. And that's nothing against these other guys. Brandon is really good. Lyons is good. Henderson is phenomenal. These kids are really, really going to be great quarterbacks. But let's talk real quick about what Georgia is getting in Jared Curtis. This pops up here. I've seen his player comp as Matt Stafford too. I've been saying that for 2 years. Now, the first time I mentioned that was simply because that's what I heard somebody at UGA say. Now, I will always default to what I'm hearing from inside the program. Okay. I will always pass along the words there, and I heard Matt Stafford, and I'm like, oh my God. Don't give me this BS. And why do I say that? It's because they've always, every running back for the last 30 years has been compared to Herschel Walker. Every running back is the next Herschel Walker. Every running back is the next Todd Gurley. Remember when Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall got here, they called him Gershel, to compare him to them. Granted, very fair, but they weren't the only. Same thing with Zeus. Same thing with James Cook. Same thing with Elijah Holyfield. Every running back is the next Herschel. Every quarterback is, Matt Stafford is the benchmark. He was number 1 player, came to Georgia, played 3 years, was number 1 draft pick, $40 million. It's easy to say that. So when I went to see the kid, when I went to see Jared Curtis, I'm thinking, this is the guy y'all are calling the next Matt Stafford. It took 2 passes for me to believe the hype. When Jared Curtis, you go ahead and bookmark this at 13:50 in the live tweet or live show. Actually, I'll let it get exactly 14 minutes into the show. Jared Curtis is enough like Matt Stafford that when he throws the ball, you hear the ball whistling in the air through the spin. It cuts the air different. When it arrives, it sounds different. It makes that clunk sound when it hits the gloves. The kid throws just a different ball. You can hear it. And the last time I heard a ball make that sound was when you had Matt Stafford throwing passes, and I was on the sideline. It just sounded different. Now, the great thing is this kid has great touch. He's not going to – I'll say he won't overpower his wide receivers early on. Maybe he will be a little geeked up and a little excited, but he's had great training. Doesn't play the greatest competition up there. But by the time Mike Bobo gets done with him, I like his chances to be deft quarterback and not just a rocket arm. The kid has a rifle for an arm. I mean, the good Lord gave him a thunderbolt out in that right arm, and he just flings it in there. It's something. Yeah. I compared Nate to Doshawn, but yeah, that's true. But we do have to stop. I know a lot of people there are a lot of comments about Mike Bobo here, and the other thing I want to point out, the reason he's coming to Georgia is Mike Bobo. You can say what you want about Mike, and again, Mike and we're not friends. We're not enemies. I'm a reporter. He's a coach. I covered him when he was a player. I was working in the athletic association and covered him when he was a player. I've known him his entire career. But he doesn't tell me things. I don't tell him things. We are not friendly. We don't drink beers together. We don't pal around. I've got no reason to defend Mike Bobo. The best thing that could happen for me as the publisher of UGA Sports is for him to be fired. Because then I'd have a coaching search. You know how many clicks we get on a coaching search? It's phenomenal. Love a coaching search. I should be rooting for that guy to be fired. I know he's friends with some of our competition. I'm not saying he ever talks to them. I don't know that, but I'm like, it would be ideal if he wasn't in Athens for me as UGA Sports publisher. So I don't defend Mike out of that, but I will say I call a spade. And this is a situation where if it weren't for Mike Bobo's efforts with, convincing Jared Curtis's mom, he would not be committed to the University of Georgia. He hadn't showed him a great game plan. The kid committed a while back, and knowing that Mike Bobo was going to be his offensive coordinator. So he believes in Mike. The family believes in Mike, and that's all you can hope for. So, again, not really trying to give Mike too much blame or credit, but just saying the folk, if you want to blame him for stuff, feel free. I've got no dog in the fight. But then you also have to give him credit when he gets a kid here. And I see we got Lance is trying to join us. I'm not sure if Lance is in position close enough to actually get on or not. This question comes up a lot, and Miriam nails it. Are there concerns about the level of competition he's played in high school? Yes, Miriam, there are a lot of questions about it. But let me go back. And again, I hate to talk about camps too much, Miriam, but it's this is where the kid impressed me the most. How many of you remember Jamarcus Russell, the number 1 overall pick, big LSU giant quarterback? He was the one running that Under Armour camp. He was running the quarterbacks. And when they have 40 QBs walk out there and they're throwing the ball around, and after a couple passes, Jamarcus is like, hey, what's your name? Talking to Jared Curtis. Like, did they call you Rocket in high school? They call you Rocket? Your name Rocket? And he called him Rocket the rest of the day because, again, the ball just came out of his hand different than the other 40 QBs that were there. You could hear it. It was a difference. And every time he threw it, he was like, say what you will about Jamarcus Russell, but he was a quarterback. He's played at the highest level. Guy, he didn't have the NFL career that we wanted, but, good knows good. So when he saw him, he's like, this kid is special. So the point is, I'm with you, Miriam, on the level of talent he plays. He won't have seen DBs like he will see when Georgia plays in the SEC. He will not have seen DBs like that. He will not have seen defensive ends like that. He will not have seen defensive tackles like that. He will not see those defenses and the schemes and the twisting safeties and the false coverages. He'll have never seen that. Well, neither had Ryan Puglisi. My point is, from a talent standpoint, we're not basing this off of tape. We're basing this off of what we've seen in person, and he is head and shoulders better than anybody I've covered in some time. So that counts up. I take that as a great sign. One thing for certain, Mike Bobo can't catch the ball for receivers. Georgia had more drops than anyone in the country. number 11 was brutal. Well, number 11 also was drafted higher than any of the Georgia wide receivers. But I get what you're saying, Mike. Yeah, he can't catch the ball for receivers. That's true. And that would a lot of those drop passes are on third down. Could have extended those drives, get yourself 3 or 4 more series, a lot more points. James Coley, all eyes are on him. Can you get that? Can you get that fixed? Get them back to catching passes. So I think they will. Really excited about Jeremiah Branch and Dylan Bell and Noah Thomas and Colby Young and London Humphreys. It should be hell. Throw it to Cash Jones. They threw it to Cash Jones 24 times. They handed it off to him 14 times. He's technically a running back. He can obviously catch. He caught it 10 more times than he ran it. You got to think that Georgia's, with this influx of talent, and I want to say they had the yips, because it wasn't just number 11 last year. Dominic Lovett dropped passes. Dylan Bell dropped passes. Everybody dropped passes, except maybe Cash. So I just think it infected the room, and I just can't see it happening 2 years in a row. Now, the question popped up, and I'm looking over here, and I got TikTok running on a phone, and a lot of folks in the TikTok comments are asking about, like Tommy says, I think a lot of those drops were a function of two things. The lack of touch by Beck, that could definitely do it. And it's cut off there. Sorry, Tom. You got to hope that, I will say, we spoke to numerous wide receivers last year, and they did say, and again, this was the run up to the Sugar Bowl, the run up to the playoff game, that the ball comes off the hand differently for Gunnar Stockton. So maybe just a different QB will get rid of some of those drops. The reason I have Carson's comment up here about the Jackson Cantwell text, okay, if you go back to who were the best players, let's look at the number 1 overall player is Jackson Cantwell. He's an offensive tackle. He's 6'8". He's 320 pounds. Out of Missouri. Ton of offers. An absolute beast of human being who was going to announce much earlier and then decided to change it up. Lance, are you ready to come on? Can't. But he was going to announce early May. He moved it back. Okay. Moving his commitment back to add one more visit to Georgia. There have been a lot of rumors that Jackson Cantwell and Jared Curtis are. You're on, Lance.
Can you hear me?
Were connected in their commitments. And sure enough, Jackson Cantwell, he took a lot of notice of the commitment today by Jared Curtis. So they're not a package deal. But the number 1 quarterback, we're looking for the number 1 offensive tackle and vice versa. So again, I know we don't have Jared Curtis as a number 1 quarterback, but again, I think he's number 1 just from what I've seen. So I will take that anytime. Can I hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Just on the road, leaving Stevenson.
All right. Give me your thoughts on the day.
Obviously, this is a huge day for Georgia football fans. They get, a 5-star quarterback and one that was committed to them previously, and he finds his way back home. And I honestly can check it out, but it seems like this is a little different. This is a kid with no ties to other schools, related, family wise, and it just seems like this is going to be, his home for the next couple of years and just see
At
how it
least a
develops.
year. I know what you're
It's
saying.
it's a really, yeah, it's a really really good day for Kirby Smart and staff.
Yeah. So this is the Jackson Cantwell. Congratulations. They're shaking hands with Jared Curtis. So again, it could be the start, to your point, of it's a big day for Georgia. It could be the start of some 5-star dominoes. And I know you had a story ready to go just in case Georgia didn't get him. And I appreciate that, because that's if Georgia had missed, the first question is, well, what the hell do we do now?
Yeah, where's Georgia going next?
And here's the thing: we won't delete that story. We will save that story somewhere else.
Exactly. Because in this industry, who knows?
Yeah. But I think the second, again, everything he's done has been, I don't say meticulous, but it's been very well thought out.
Exactly.
He picked Georgia because he thought that was the right place for him. Then when I won't say he was having second thoughts, but then when he wanted to look around, he decommitted. Then he broke it down, this number of schools, down to 2 schools. And it wasn't, hey, I'm down to 2 schools, and he picked a third. He stuck with what he was saying. And I think that this is the end of that whole. I don't think he will be decommitting and looking around again. That this recruitment has seemed very forthright, straight ahead, not a ton of information, which can be very frustrating to our readers. I get that, but there haven't been games. This isn't the Juju Lewis recruitment. And I'm not banging on Juju. He's a good kid, but this has been a lot less drama. And the fact that there wasn't a ton of information also has an effect on how much drama there was. So I get that, but I think if you could get Jared Curtis, and you're willing to pony up the money to get him, I don't know how much he's getting, and that wasn't the number. They're in a good situation, but he's also worth a lot. They're going up against Oregon and the Nike money, and George is able to go toe to toe. I think if they're willing to do that, then they're willing to put what it takes to get Jackson Cantwell. Maybe Tyler Rackets, maybe some others. Thoughts, Lance?
Can you repeat that last part?
I'm just saying, if they're willing to go in as far as they did on Jared Curtis and likely Jackson Cantwell, because remember, he moved his commitment date back so that he could take one more visit to Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this may, and the story came out about Texas being a $30 or $40 million recruiting class or signing class or budget. I think Georgia's called in the big dogs. I know they called in one big dog. He's a friend of mine. He's put me in a suite before, and he got the call saying, "Hey, we're going to need you." And this was a few weeks ago. And sure enough, right after that, Jackson Cantwell moved his date back. I'm not saying the two are related. I'm just saying this guy is a big dog, and they called him up, said, "We might need you for something." So I'm just thinking that this might be I don't want to call it a legendary class, but this is not going to be a class where Georgia is frugal.
Exactly. And it seems like you said, it seems like the stars are aligning. It just seems like the dominoes are about to fall. And, like you said, there are a couple more, key pieces that they like to get in Cantwell and Atkinson. But a day like this helps that class, because now Jared Curtis can go, and obviously he's friends with Cantwell. He can go and recruit Cantwell. I know Cantwell decides, I think in 8 days, a little over a week. Maybe his decision's already made. Maybe it wasn't. I know Cantwell's going to be at Georgia this weekend. Maybe Jared Curtis pops down from Nashville for an unofficial. Not like it's real hard to, do that for him. I know that Elijah Griffin did that over the summer. I think either before or after his official visit, but maybe this is something that happens, and it's just another piece, in the puzzle that Georgia's trying to put together with this class, and it's only a positive. Today are only a positive in the grand scheme of things with this class.
I'll say this about the whole Jared Curtis thing. It's being handled like a professional kid. I mean, a professional QB. got the agent. The communication is being handled professionally, which is frustrating because they're not talking. They weren't talking to us a whole lot. The decommitment to go visit other schools, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But now what do you do if you're Jared Curtis? You try to get the number one offensive tackle to protect you. You look for running backs. You look for wide receivers. You try to get good defensive guys to get you back on the field. We haven't heard a whole lot about him reaching out to other people. Bet you that changes. I bet you I'll put a C note on it right now that all of a sudden like you said, maybe he comes down for the Jackson Cantwell visit. Maybe he comes down for some other things. He gets that playbook. He starts working on it. He starts prepping for it, just like Ryan Puglisi did. Ryan Puglisi, you didn't hear much about Ryan Puglisi recruiting other guys, and then he committed, and then he did. So that's definitely a situation where I can see Curtis being very meticulous and going and getting the guys that he needs to make him to be that leader in the locker room. So.
Yeah, I completely agree, and honestly, I think that maybe not for you and I, the quieter the better you hear from a big time quarterback like this and Puglisi, but I think that's positive for the Georgia fan base to maybe calm their nerves about him possibly flipping or talking to other schools. I think that the less you hear about Curtis as a fan, it's probably for the better, which means he's maybe building this class behind the scenes.
If he has been, we have definitely not heard enough about it. Not heard as much as we would like. And again, we do know about a couple group chats or group textings, where these guys talk back and forth. But a lot of eyes were on this one to see where Jared Curtis was going to go. Now you're going to see, a bunch of other quarterbacks commit, and that should make you feel better when Bo Bentley picks his place. And was it O'Neal?
Jaden O'Neal probably likely staying with Oklahoma now.
Right. So, the other, so if you're a Sooners fan, you're thrilled as hell right now.
Yeah.
So, but again, a lot of these other dominoes stay in place, and now you'll start to see like the infamous invincible cheap toy man 5-star wide receivers take note. Yeah. There's some 2027 guys who are really, really good. And when you have a recruiter like James Coley who can say, look, I've got this 5-star QB already lined up, and plus the other guys, I can definitely see it. So,
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I think it's about time maybe to go check out Douglas County, see what Aaron Gregory.
I know you're going to bring him up.
See who's the other receiver is drawn a blank. The other top receiver who was committed to Florida State. His dad played football at Florida State.
I know who you're talking about. I can't.
The name. I mean, he's another top 10 receiver. Maybe it's time to go check into those guys and just kind of see. Hey, this is this is kind of like what you were talking about.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. All right, folks. Anyway, that's I went a little longer than I wanted to. I appreciate all the comments in the comment section there. We're going to wrap this up because I got to get Jed a hotel room because he's in Nashville and he's got behind the scenes story to write about his interactions with Jared Curtis. So be sure to check out the front page of UGAsports.com when you get a chance. Appreciate all you folks jumping in with us. Really mean it. Talk to you later.